Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Wednesday. I am thrilled to be here to discuss how mentoring is catalyzing student success efforts with graduate programs across the country. Today, we are going to be hearing how mentorship has provided innovation to graduate student success efforts at universities across the states. My name is Jen, and let's kick it off. All right, so I have met some of you before. I see some familiar names in in the attendance list there. I'm Mentor Collective's customer education manager. I create education opportunities here that support building strong mentorship initiatives that drive impact at your institutions. And I'll be facilitating this session today. I will be joined in just a few minutes by my colleague Annemiek Rice, who is Vice President of Partner Success at Mentor Collective, and she'll be the host for the duration of today's webinar. I'll also be joined later from graduate professionals at three of our partner institutions. We are delighted to have Rachel Ann Martinez, Director of Student Engagement at the School of Leadership and Education Sciences at University of San Diego, Jennifer Clinkscales, Associate Dean of Student Affairs at University of Pennsylvania School of Social Policy and Practice, and also our partners at Cal Poly Pomona. Solomon Oldak, Director of Graduate Studies, Rebecca Rivas, Graduate Studies Analyst, and Nora Sella, Graduate Studies Advisor. Just a quick few housekeeping notes as we get started. This webinar is being recorded and we'll send you the recording as well as some additional educational resources in a follow-up email. On the screen, you'll see a few tips to help ensure just a smooth virtual experience for everyone today. You can adjust your video layout to speaker view and you can follow who's chatting in that way. We've also found that if your camera is on, it allows for a much more engaging conversation. But we also understand if you're eating your lunch or whatnot and you want to be off camera, that's fine. We'd also love to know where everyone is joining from, so please feel free to share your name and institution in the chat. Great. All right, so as you're submitting where you're from and introducing yourselves in the chat, just a note on the chat, you can always drop questions into the chat as the webinar is progressing, and we'll also open up for a live Q&A session at the end. So if you have a question that you want to come off mic or off mute for, we'd be happy to speak with you at the end. We also encourage you to use the reactions feature in Zoom to let us know how you feel about any topics that maybe make an impact for you. So you can use all of those fun Zoom emojis. We love emojis. In today's session, we will explore how intentional mentorship programs can provide the socio-emotional support that graduate students need to achieve their personal and their professional goals. By participating today, you'll hear from Annemiek and also through the stories shared from our partners about the impact mentorship has on graduate student success, how mentorship is incorporated into the overall graduate student experience, what makes graduate student mentorship successful, as well as some actionable best practices that you might learn for fostering a culture of mentorship at your own institution. All right, to better understand your specific graduate student needs, we have a quick poll for you. So get ready. There we are. We would love to know if you are already a partner with us here at Mentor Collective, as well as if you already have a graduate mentorship program, either with Mentor Collective, one without Mentor Collective, or maybe you're just thinking about one. We'd love to know that as well to be able to support you in this conversation. Finally, we're also really interested in the top issues facing your graduate students. You'll hear Annemiek talk with our partners today about that and how mentorship can support some of those challenges. Great. Great. All right. So it looks like we have a healthy mix here of folks who are both currently with Mentor Collective and some folks who might be newer in their mentorship journey and interested in partnering. So that's fantastic. All right.
Are we ready to get started, Jen?
Yeah, so I will pass it off to you now, Anamik, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about the conversation. So I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us, everyone. I am going to kick us off with a little bit of dive into the research and literature about graduate students, their success, some of the things that are probably top of mind for many of you on the call today, or might be a good refresher. Before we jump into the firsthand stories from these three great institutions today, just want to echo Jen in thanking each of you for joining this panel and sharing your perspective and giving others insights. We really appreciate our partners really always ask for these opportunities to dialogue and learn from each other and hear about each of you who are tackling this work. So really grateful for the folks who are here today and sharing their time. And then also hoping those of you who are dialed in, feel free to use the Q&A feature to share any questions that you have, and Jen and I will pitch them to our panelists as we go. I will say, I think most people here, like no one feels like an expert or perfect in every way. So the folks who are talking are probably just as interested in hearing from the folks who are listening. So if you also have something to share as we go, feel free to submit that. Also want to acknowledge, I know that the chat is not on. We'll see if Jen can turn it on during the webinar, but if not, go ahead and use the Q&A feature and we'll share those out as well. So just diving a little bit into some of the background, and I should also say my full-time job is to get to hang out with our Mentor Collective partners and the partner success team here all day long. But my graduate work and my experience in higher education has been in the study of higher education and college student development. So going to geek out a little bit today with some of the things that I have learned and continue to keep in touch with about what's happening in the state of higher education today. And we know that each of you are facing issues that affect the graduate student population, certainly not limited to these elements, but you might be thinking about enrollment or value of education. We see that only 53% of graduate students in a recent assessment said that their grad degree was definitely worth it. So there's certainly some students who are evaluating kind of impact of the degree, the investment that they make personally or financially into that. And each of you are really dedicated to making that a high investment for those students. We also know that employers sometimes question the preparation of undergraduate and graduate students who are entering the workforce, whether that workforce is industry or the academy, depending on their outcomes from their graduate student experience. We know that students have growing needs, and we also know that they struggle to use the amazing services that you already offer. Many of you today will talk about help seeking and how do we get the students to take advantage of the services we offer, the people who are here to help them. And then finally, I think all of you are limited on time and capacity. So with all of these constraints and problems in mind, there are also some really good things to remember about how mentorship can help alleviate some of these challenges and amplify the impact that each of you make each day as professionals. So I want to share like the relevance of a mentee and mentor relationship is so important for these students. Whether that mentor is an upper class graduate student, a faculty member, an alumni, whomever it might be, this is really that relationship that allows the student to identify opportunities, make connections, to build their network, to access the resources. They can be an integral human connection to everything that your institution has to offer, everything that your field has to offer as you're thinking about these students entering that field as well. I want to share, as always, these testimonials from some of the programs here today and others. These are students who have agreed to have their testimonial shared publicly. Just like, what does this mean for mentees? What do they get out of this? How do they benefit? What's their perspective? Sometimes it's as simple as time management. Sometimes it's that personal advice on internships. Mentors also benefit. We talk often about how do mentees benefit from mentorship, but many of the mentors who join a mentorship program are doing it because they benefited from that themselves, or maybe they didn't and they wish they had had it. Um, and also that they did that pay it forward mentality. I know some of you on the line are going to talk about that, the way your students want to pay it forward, the way your alumni want to pay it forward, but also what they learn and gain from the experience of having a mentee and staying connected to your institution. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that I know are going to come up with each of our examples today. What do we know about some of the issues or opportunities that we have for graduate students to be invested in by mentorship, and some of the evidence that exists that these things are powerful? So the first one is sense of belonging and social connection. I think this will come up the most with our panelists today, is this element of like boosting the students' experience, ensuring that they have safety and a great and welcoming environment. We know that mentorship help build those social supports in this area, that it fosters this inclusive and collaborative environment, that students are able to have a more eased integration into the community of your institution, especially at the very beginning. And that peer mentors in particular, or close to peer mentors, whether that's a recent graduate or someone who's currently at the institution, can help offer really tangible strategies for navigating the institutional environment, coping, or just being empathetic to social challenges. There is a lot of evidence that connects peer mentorship to reduce stress, anxiety, that mentored students report overall higher well-being and greater resilience, and also that students with mentors have higher satisfaction and stronger senses of belonging and lower dropout rates or stop out rates than other students. The next outcome you'll hear a lot about today is help seeking and resource utilization and getting students to use the services available to them. We know that our graduate students are facing pretty complex challenges. They're not just about school, they're about life. They're navigating many things at once. And that things like imposter syndrome and fear of judgment can sometimes deter students from help seeking behavior. So mentors can normalize help seeking. They can encourage help seeking by asking questions. They can also serve as a bridge. You're going to hear great examples today of how the folks on the line feel like mentors help them understand which mentees need help, and they can reach out and offer it. They can also make students aware of resources that exist at the institution, which I think is a challenge we all face. You have so many great things available, and yet you're still struggling to get everyone to navigate and find them and take advantage. Some of the evidence that we focus on here, graduate students with mentors who talk so that the mentors themselves use resource utilization, whether that's going to professional development, engaging with faculty, whatever, are more likely to adopt those similar behaviors. We also know that mentored students are more knowledgeable about resources and report higher rates of that use, particularly for things around academic support and mental health, and that mentors significantly increase that likelihood for mentees. Another outcome that we see in our examples is academic self-efficacy, so that belief in ability to succeed. This is really important as students experience new academic challenges in the graduate domain compared to the undergraduate domain, if they're navigating directly from there, or from the workforce, if they're coming from the workforce and going back into school for the first time after a break. And we know that self-efficacy is associated with academic performance and resilience and an overall positive attitude about their learning and growth. So peer mentors and mentors in general can offer some really great advice about academic and research skills, about coursework, about time management. They also understand the demands of a graduate curriculum, and specifically the graduate curriculum that you're in if you're in a certain discipline, whether that's handling research challenges, meeting program requirements, preparing for qualifying exams. So the studies that show that peer mentorship improves performance and skill acquisition, and that students in mentorships report higher self-efficacy and confidence in managing their workload, especially those who were early in their graduate program. All of this combines to affect persistence and completion. This is certainly not the primary motivation for most of the institutions that we work with, but we do know that because I think many of you have very lovely high persistence and completion rates, and you're looking for student success beyond that. But we do know that a lot of these factors will affect a student's ability to complete on time or complete within the time and finance constraints that they're looking for. So studies that we have looked at look at both higher completion and satisfaction, but also that students who leave programs often will cite things like frustration with the environment, and that mentorship can overcome some of that frustration. So it can avoid a student leaving what we might consider to be unnecessarily, right? I'm sure you all have that student who didn't complete or departed, and you think, oh, that didn't have to be their experience. If only we'd been able to help them. So this is just another one of the many things you can do to prevent that type of avoidable dissatisfaction or departure. And then lastly, but certainly not least, career readiness. So as these students are transitioning into their next step, certainly every aspect of their graduate student experience is about career readiness. They are coming here to usually qualify themselves for a very specific career. But we know that students are still struggling to navigate that, and that what will often be associated with the greatest satisfaction or valuation of their graduate degree is what and how they land when they leave. So how are we supporting them during and as they exit? And mentors, especially faculty and alumni and industry professionals, can be extremely powerful in helping a student navigate that transition, keeping them connected to what's after the graduate student experience. Many of you do great programs around this as well, and balancing both the academic realities of being a graduate student and the realities of preparing for their career post-graduation. So we know that that type of career-oriented guidance can make them more successful in their job searches or even their job decisions if they are choosing kind of which direction to go in those early stages. And then also thinking about the fact that these students are, of course, entering your alumni community, and having those connections with other alumni will transcend in terms of value beyond the graduation moment for these graduates. So just a reminder of many things you already know, but also a refresher of some of the things that we're going to hear and will be talked about with some of our great panelists today. So each of our three partner institutions today is going to share a little bit of their story. They're going to talk about their whys, like what their graduate students are facing, why they have a mentorship program, how they work with that, tell you a little bit of a story of what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. And then we are going to wrap up with everyone at the same time, just sharing tips for other institutions who either are considering or are currently using mentorship programs for graduate students. So we're going to start with the University of San Diego. Let me talk a little bit. Rachel is going to join me here. So Rachel, as Jennifer mentioned, is the Director of Student Engagement for the School of Leadership and Education Sciences, which is a fantastic academic college and has some really fantastic programs over at USD. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. We just talked about some of the top issues or areas. So when you think about your students, what are the top issues you feel like are facing your students today?
Absolutely. And thank you, Anamik and Mentor Collective for having me. When I think about this question, I think the top three issues that immediately came to mind. The first is affordability. I mean, not just USD, but also being situated in San Diego. We're America's finest city, but that means we're one of the most expensive. And so affordability and access to funding definitely has been um, a top issue for our students. And in addition to that, I would say balancing school with other priorities. Our students are not only students, they're also employees, whether full-time or part-time, grad assistants, parents, caretakers. And so how do they balance graduate school on top of all of the other things that they have going on and all the other parts of themselves that they have to tend to? And the last is that navigational capital. So accumulating the know-how of who to go to for what, where to go for what resource, to be able to successfully maneuver through graduate school.
I love that phrase, navigational capital. That's a really great way of also saying, rephrasing that help-seeking concept as well. So really love that you've introduced that word to our conversation today. Walk us through a little bit about the why of your mentorship program. So within the context of everything you're doing for graduate student success, what's the outcome or impact you're trying to drive through or to with mentorship?
Yeah, great. And I think just to summarize it nicely, it's really about creating a community that is centered around belonging and support, really normalizing the idea that we learn in community and we support one another, because none of us do this alone. And so really emphasizing the importance of getting mentorship and getting that support through this program.
Yeah. Walk us through the program a little bit. Who's in it? How do you engage these folks? Tell us a little bit about what that looks like.
Yeah, so we we utilize the peer program. So we have incoming first year students sign up as mentees, and then we pair them with continuing students, so second year and up, because we do have both master's and doctoral programs within Souls. And so this really allows our incoming students to have a soft landing when we think about their transition into our school, and really having a peer to answer all those questions that might not be so easy to ask. We have a lot of first generation students that participate. We have many first generation students at Souls in general, and many of them often opt into this program because they don't have folks in their families or communities that have gone to graduate school before. And so having a current student in the program tell them, where should I look for an apartment? Or what classes do you think I should take? Where can I get groceries because I'm not from here? Those sorts of questions that they're immediately able to get that support and also make a connection even before the first day of classes.
And I know our team here has shared a lot about the strength of your program. And one of the things that you've done is really provided some specific resources to mentees and mentors and that, what do you call it, navigational capital, and hope and trying to drive some of those resources as well. Tell us a little bit about like maybe a story or two of that impact. So what can you give us an example of what mentorship in action looks like for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a one story that stands out is we definitely rely heavily on the flags that Mentor Collective provides in as part of the platform. So this is where a mentor is able to submit different comments based on the interactions that they've had with their mentees. And so I can think of one example, and going back to that idea of affordability, one of the mentors let us know in a flag that a mentee didn't have as much funding as they were hoping to receive, and that really jeopardized their ability to continue with enrolling with us. And so receiving that message and having us be able to immediately activate, and I was able to connect with our assistant dean in recruitment and enrollment to see if there's any funding available, as well as refer our student to graduate financial aid. And I love a story with a happy ending. She was able to secure additional funding, and pleased to share that she was able to still continue to join us here at Souls.
Yeah. And sometimes those things you think, would I ever have known? Like, would they have said something or did they know
Right.
was an option, right? So many of you tell those examples of those types of things. That's great.
Right.
Anything else you'd like to share with us about your kind of what you've learned from your program or what makes it really successful for your students or you?
Absolutely. I think we often talk about how higher education, we work in silos, and I think our mentor program has been a very positive way to sort of resist that idea because we're then able to really triage how we support our students because we get the information from the students themselves, and so that gives us access to information upon which we're able to act. So being able to work more closely with our faculty, being able to work more closely with our leadership, to be able to better provide support with our students. Because we all know so many things, but how often are we interacting with one another and having those collaborative conversations so that we can best identify the various ways that we can support our students?
You mentioned faculty as one of those common collaborators. Like, what are the most common collaborators you're seeing right now when it comes to student success? What are the offices or individuals that you're connecting with the most?
Well, we certainly, I loved what you mentioned about mentorship being supportive of mentors as well. And so when we are recruiting for mentors, oftentimes students will think, well, I'm still figuring things out, so I couldn't possibly mentor right now. Like, what do you mean? And really, it's an opportunity to empower them, to remind them, like, you remember what it's like to be an incoming student. You've actually successfully navigated that, and that wisdom is something that you can share. And that relates to faculty because they know them in a more unique capacity with their advising relationships. And so faculty have very special access to students where we had a situation where I spoke with one of our faculty members and I was asking, do you have any PhD students that would be great mentors? And he immediately sent an email to a student and said, hey, so and so, I think you would make a great mentor. Sign up for this. Here's the link. And receiving that from your faculty advisor goes a really long way because you're seen in a way that kind of puts you in a position that you hadn't thought of, and allows you to pursue a source of leadership, that you're able to give back to your school while also navigating being a student yourself.
I love that. Hopefully, folks listening are writing down faculty nominations and their list of ideas for next year, both because of that boost that you mentioned, and also just thinking about um, the truth of that concept of second-year graduate students do not feel like they have it all figured out. So I think there's an element of grad school that almost you graduate thinking you know less than you did when you came in, because you're so exposed to, especially terminal degrees and diving so deeply into one area of study. Imposter syndrome is something that graduates struggle with, not
Absolutely.
just incoming students. So that encouragement and reminder that actually what drives the best outcomes for mentees is someone who can relate to them
Mhm.
and not someone who has it all figured out is probably good messaging in the mentor recruitment space. So really appreciate you reminding us of that. Thank you so much, Rachel. All
Thank
right,
you.
let's hear one more story before. And actually, I wanted to mention, in case those on the line are not, because some of you do not use the Mentor Collective platform. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about the relationships created between mentors and mentees and how that happens. But something that each of our partners will talk about today, I think, is the insights that they get from mentors about the conversations with mentees or the things they're struggling with. So, flags, if you hear someone mention that, is the ability for them to kind of raise their hand and say, we chatted about X. They seem to have some career indecision or financial constraints, and that allows the folks on the line here to provide an additional layer of support and outreach to students, and just also to know what's happening without necessarily violating the intimacy and security of the conversation between the mentor and the mentee. All right, so I'm going to move on to Penn. And I had a chance to meet Jen in person last month. So I'm very excited to chat with you again today, as I am with all of our partners. So Jennifer Klinkscales, who leads the mentorship program and the student affairs team at Penn School of Social Policy and Practice. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us, so what are the biggest challenges your students are facing? Kind of how do you think about the challenges to graduate students today?
Hi, everyone, and thank you for the invitation to be here. I would say that for our students, their major areas of concern around finding employment after graduation, academic challenges while they're in the program, and that could also, similar to what Rachel said, are just around managing everything. Our program is a professional degree program, so our students are also, many have part-time jobs, full-time jobs, but they're also working in the Philadelphia community because that's a requirement of the curriculum. So they leave here with hands-on experience, but that's yet another responsibility they have. So being able to manage that, and then also just a sense of belonging, finding that connection because their schedules are so jam-packed with coursework and their personal lives as well as with internships. They're not always on campus, and so feeling a connection to school have been some of the major issues that our students face.
Really interesting you bring that up too, because a desire to connect and then the ability to have the bandwidth to do it aren't necessarily the same thing, right? So, and I think many of you face that. Will my students come to this event or be here in person? And is the limitation there a desire, or is it just, I need to get to the grocery store, I need to get to class, I need to get wherever I need to go in my life. So really great reminding us of that. So let's talk a little bit about your mentorship program. So what's your why here, and walk us through a little bit about how you've set this up for your students.
Yeah, I really think the Mentor Collective is great. I feel like I can speak for myself is that I wouldn't be in the position I am in without mentorship. And so this is something that I talk to students about, is that in order to even excel in your career and whatever stage that you're in, whether it's actually in school or beyond, it's good to have mentors. So the goals of the program is really to give our students that personalized mentorship, which you have up here, as well as and we saw it really as like a multi-prong approach. So also engaging our alumni mentors. And so it's a way to bring that community and so that they still feel connected to the university, giving that specialized support, which I mentioned, and then also to help with summer melt. And that's kind of the part with our admissions department. It's like over the summer, while students are still deciding if they're coming, or they've decided and then they, for summer, over whatever reason, something happens over the summer and they decide not to attend, having a connection with an alumni mentor can help bridge that gap from when they're admitted and accept, let's say in March, April, and then until school starts at the end of August.
So you introduce them to their mentor before they even set foot on campus. Is that?
Yeah, we do. We do. We give them the option, but I would say the program is in full like in full motion in September at the beginning of the academic year, but we do have the option for students to connect with our alumni mentors. Hearing Rachel speak about peer mentors is something that I would love to explore in another conversation, because I think there's opportunity for us there. But having our alumni to be able to connect with students who have walked in the same shoes that they have really is valuable. And then it really allows our mentors to feel like they're giving back. Not everyone is always able to give back monetarily, but often I think we could agree that time and your talent can be more valuable than giving a few dollars here or there. So students really, really do value the relationships that they develop. And I was thinking of a graduate who had a mentor when we first started, and she has returned the favor by becoming a mentor when she was a mentee, just to give back because it was so impactful for her in her academic journey.
Yeah. The way you engage alumni is a really interesting element of your program. Tell us more about the kind of the partnership you have with that area. Why does the alumni office care, right? Like what's the return, and how do you engage as a collaborator?
Yeah, so I'm in the Office of Student Affairs, and then we have an institutional advancement office, which is our alumni office, and they, engage our alumni. I mean, at the end of the day, so happy students make happy alumni, and happy alumni, give back in a myriad of ways. And so I collaborate with my colleagues and say, hey, these are ways that we can engage our community, and especially those who are not in the area. So nationwide, worldwide, we can engage folks so they still feel connected and feel that sense of pride in their school.
Yeah. Really love hearing about these ways that you all bridge the gap for your students across these different departments on campus, especially in institutions that don't always make it that easy to do that, right? Despite, I think, all our best interests, there's often these natural tendencies to stay in our lanes, and that is not what helps students. So everyone on this call is doing the work to kind of break those paths down for their students as well.
Yeah, I think the program, I mean, really helps in allowing students to choose or select mentors based on areas or criteria that's most important to them. And I feel like that's what really sets this program apart. In the past, like prior to the pandemic, we tried a variety of ways to engage our alumni, different ways to support students while they were here, and for students to be able to select alumni mentors based on their area of interest, location, um, whether they are returning students, like adult learners, whether they have families or full-time jobs, I really think has made a significant impact.
I love hearing that. And um, it's one of the best parts, I think, of the match between the mentee and mentor is obviously, I think as educators, we have the research. We say, oh, if students have this in common, it'll work. But the end of the day, what actually makes the most fruitful pairing is just what you said, which is the mentee is really looking for someone who shares this lived experience with them, and they get to indicate that on their matching survey, and they get to drive the weighting and relevance of those things. So if what they really need is someone else who is doing this well a parent, or someone else who's going back 30 years and changing careers, then that's what they get, right? And then that makes that connection the most fruitful. So even the concept of peer is a very personal concept. Like, who does that student consider their peer? It doesn't have to be someone who's still in school. It's just someone that they feel like they can relate to and is part of the community that they belong to.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. Let's pivot to, I think, like what's the story here of how mentorship has created impact for you? What does that look like in practice?
So, I kind of have to take a step back and just say how the mentor collective like program really works for us. I really see it as an extension of our student affairs office. Um, we have a small school, and often with small schools, you don't have as many staff. And because our students are not always, they spend actually more time in the community than they do in the building, their connection with their alumni mentor just gives us an additional like 300 to 500 eyes and ears, pairs of eyes and ears that are looking out for our students, to making sure that they have the resource they need, and to alert us with the flags of concerns that they may be expressing that they haven't necessarily told us in the building. So, very similar to some of the concerns that Rachel mentioned. We'll have a student who's having issues in their internship that may not have been communicated. And so an alumni mentor could let us know, and then our office can say, hey, faculty member, this student needs more support. Internship office, the student may need someone to do a site visit. And then from the student affairs perspective, there might be some psychosocial support that we could provide for them. And, it could range from counseling services. It could range from they need additional financial support for transportation to and from their internship. So I really feel like that is one of the really value adds of the program, is that, you say you hire someone, not that this is replacing a staff person, but let's say the cost of hiring someone and all that entails in that, but then having all of these mentors who are there really supporting the mission of the school, and really supporting the student and their goals. And that's what, it really gives that personal touch.
And I just threw up a couple of the testimonials from your students here for folks to see and share, but I know that many of you think of your mentors as part of that, right, community of care, right? They are maybe not paid staff, but they are definitely part of who is there to help students. And when you're under administrative restraint, or you have a lot more that you want to do and not enough time to do it all, that can make a big difference. Thank you very much, Jennifer. All right, let's go to our final partner spotlight here from Cal Poly Pomona. We've got a great team of folks here. Would you each like to say hello and introduce yourselves before we jump in?
Yeah, I'll start. I'm Solomon Oldak. I'm the Faculty Director of Graduate Studies.
Rebecca, you're muted. Would you like to?
Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Rivas, and I'm the Graduate Studies Analyst in the Office of Graduate Studies.
Hi, everyone. My name is Noor Saleh, and I am the Graduate Studies Advisor with the Office of the Graduate Resource Center.
So one of the great things about this team is like this team approach, the fact that these students have such great care professionals and experts available to them. So Nora, do you want to speak for the group? Tell us, what do you see as the biggest challenge or challenges facing your students now?
Yeah, of course. And thank you so much for having us today. Before I get started, I kind of want to just give a little bit of background on our program. So before we actually partnered with Mentor Collective, we hosted the mentorship program ourselves. And we knew that Mentor Collective was working with our undergraduate student population, so we decided to give it a try with our graduate student population. And initially, the primary objective with creating our own mentorship program was that we noticed a lot of students didn't have a sense of belonging to Cal Poly Pomona, so we wanted to address that critical issue and enhance, student sense of belonging. So given that our campus primarily serves commuting students, that means that students spend less time on campus. So we aim to cultivate, a stronger sense of belonging. We noticed that most of our students felt disconnected from the campus community, and we knew that this could negatively impact their overall success as students. So I would say that that's, still the top issue that we face today is that, cultivating that sense of belonging at Cal Poly.
And this is something slightly different for your example is you're serving graduate students across all disciplines at Cal Poly Pomona, right? Yeah. So not just within one individual college or community, but the whole institutional community. So you're looking
Yes.
to connect them to the institution as a whole, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. We do pair students. We try to, pair mentor and mentee within a discipline, but in general, our program serves the entire community.
Great. Tell us more about the program. So how do you make this work at your institution?
Well, we have the mentees who are the incoming graduate students. So usually they're in their first semester, and then we have the mentors who are in at least their second semester of their studies. And then we did dip into the alumni pool last curriculum year, but this year we had more than enough mentors signing up, so we didn't get into that alumni pool. But usually we would also have mentors that are alumni, and then they have those first year those first semester mentees.
Great. So do you introduce them when they start classes? Where is it a little bit before they get onto campus? What's the moment that you make that connection for your students?
Yeah, so it's usually the beginning of the semester. We do the recruiting a little bit before the beginning of the semester, and then we aim to have the program, running within the first 2 weeks of the semester.
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned an increase in mentor interest this year. That's something anecdotally we've heard from quite a few programs is that they are kind of seeing mentor interest and sign up kind of return to some pre-pandemic rates in some cases, or they're seeing a little bit of an uptick in engagement. So those of you on the line curious if everyone else is seeing the same things, but lots of good interest from the mentors, maybe in whether they're upper division students or alumni, we're seeing that return a little bit. There was a bit of a dip, I think, in a moment in society in volunteerism and giving of our time and bandwidth, and quite a few institutions are seeing that return as well. Anything else you want to share about kind of what you mentioned sense of belonging? Anything else you want to share about why this is important to you or how you're focusing on it?
Yeah, of course. So, we also want to identify obstacles that our students face that might impede a smooth graduation. So the priority flags have been really helpful and critical in achieving and helping us achieve that. They provide insights into student concerns that we might not have had otherwise if it weren't for those flags, if it wasn't for a mentor collective. So the information is valuable, and it helps us address and improve the overall student experience. And again, before partnering with Mentor Collective, our main issue is addressing the effectiveness of the program itself. And I would say that, Mentor Collective has positively contributed towards the impact that our program is driving towards.
Knowing that it's working in general. That yeah, the assessment. A lot of you, I think, on the line love the data, love the assessment results, those types of things. So you just know that it's working instead of we're hoping that it's working. I'm sure there are lots of great mentorship programs that are invisible that are doing great work, but I think hopefully many of you are confident on a daily basis that it's happening, that it's working, that you know what's going on because of the tracking. What types of flags do you tend to get? So you said that your priority flags help you understand anything that's impeding it. Like what types of issues do you tend to see and take action on to help your students?
It could range from anything. Like usually it's academic struggles, and so in that sense, we'll refer them to either their graduate coordinator or an academic advisor, and then maybe that student can get some help on whatever academic struggles they're facing. It could be that a mentor has flagged that a mentee is dealing with, is in need of social and emotional support. So our team might refer them to the care center, the wellness center, or maybe the counseling and psychological services on our campus. So yeah, just things like general things like that we get.
Great. Nora sharing obviously some really great examples here of the some of the data elements as well. Just want to share before we we're going to ask everyone to share some tips or lessons or things for others as our wrap-up question before we get to audience Q&A. But I just want to point out that institutions like the ones sharing their stories today are a lot of what inspired our articulation of these 6 elements of a culture of mentorship. And I think many have heard these examples through the stories today about being data driven. Obviously, lots of examples of that in what we just heard from Noor, of the celebration of the mentor, the recognition of the impact that they have. Certainly lots of examples of each of you saying, this is why, this is how this connects to our overall strategy. This is strategic. This isn't mentorship for mentorship's sake, but this is how this is building the student experience that we are committed to in our mission as a college or an institution. So really, Jen is going to drop, if she already has, the culture of mentorship framework for those of you who are thinking about where to go next or what to invest in. This is a great way to reflect on how your mentorship culture manifests and where you want to deepen the culture of mentorship at your institution. Before we get to audience Q&A, and actually I do want to say to the audience, please submit your questions so that if you need a minute to think about that, we're ready for them. I want to go around the room here with some tips or lessons. So if you're chatting with someone who hasn't done this before, or maybe is even just struggling with how do I make this work effectively, what's the tip or lesson that you would give? We'll just go back in the same order. So I'm going to pop back to Rachel. What's your tip?
My tip would be to build a coalition of champions among your faculty. I think as a graduate school, we have 3 academic departments, and so being able to speak with them at faculty meetings and department meetings to really share the value of the program and having them be another source of support in encouraging our students to participate, whether as mentees or mentors. And really, again, going back to that idea of working together, sharing information and sharing all of our different perspectives, because we interact with students in such a variety of different ways.
Love that. Thank you, Rachel. Jen, what's your tip? Jennifer, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was going to say a tip for programs who are just getting started is to really highlight for your students the benefits of mentorship. We also have quite a bit of students who are first generation and may not really understand the value of mentorship. And so I think really highlighting what they can use their mentor for and how the mentorship has helped students in the past, I think is definitely one thing. And then another for us, if other programs or schools who are using your alumni community, and this probably goes well for peer mentors, is to really provide supports for your mentors in terms of how to navigate resources and, something really basic, showing appreciation for their time.
Yeah.
You don't have
Yeah. When I was in person with Jennifer and the team, we were talking a little bit about like the simple thing of like the little swag item or something that can um uh recognize that the mentor is a leader in the community, is part of creating that, and it, is kind of an author of the Penn School Social Policy experience, right? And that can go a long way in that investment, both while they're at the institution and as an alumni. Jen will be doing lots of great reminders to everyone in the start of the spring about the opportunities you have to recognize your mentors. We spend a lot of time talking about mentees and getting them engaged, et cetera, at the start of the school year, and it's easy to kind of clock out or move on. But this is a fantastic group to reward. All right, and then Noor, what's your tip?
So I would say if everyone is just getting started or even continuing, their program, I would say prioritize consistent communication with your participants, doing regular check-ins with your participants and will help build like a strong supportive relationship. And then it'll ensure that any issues that do pop up get addressed immediately. And then I think we would also share that, the process of when you actually get a priority flag, maybe have that figured out before you get the first one. Because when we got our first one, we didn't have a plan in place and we weren't sure how to proceed. I mean, now we have the process down and we have a procedure of what to do, but I think it would be helpful to put a process in place before you receive one. And then finally, it would be to promote your program to your students, maybe like the graduate orientations on your campus, depending on how your campus does orientations. It could be from department to department, or it could be just one department hosting an orientation, but just promote your program at the orientations and then as well as through email. So I know Mentor Collective does reach out to participants and they, promote the program, but we always find it helpful to also send some emails directly from our departments to promote the program to students.
Absolutely. And I think you all know this by now, that your partner success manager is working with you to say, put it in your own voice, bring it into your own spaces, really make this part of the overall student experience. Walk around to the classes, be present with the faculty. And each of you have been kind of an inspiration for some of the examples we share with some of our newer partners who are trying to figure out how to do that for the first time. So thank you. Very much. And then Jen, I think we have some questions from, so I'm going to read the first one that we have come in, and we'll see if you feel like you can answer this, just go ahead and either raise your hand or speak up. So a question from Peter: what expectations do you find that mentees have of the privacy of what they share in mentoring relationships? Like, I think everyone's sharing like this conversation back and forth. How have you dealt with mentees getting surprised at being contacted about a concern? What's your best practice in respecting privacy and dealing with flags? So Jen, Rachel, or Noor, any thoughts on this for you?
I think it's a great question, and now it's making me think if the messaging that we communicate to our mentors, around certain information. I mean, thankfully, a good number of our mentors are social workers, and so that is helpful. But when there's a flag, so there's a difference. There's a priority flag, and then the other flag is called, I'm like actually looking at my mentor collective folder. I can't remember. There's a priority flag and then a non-priority flag. So we're really only responding to the priority flags. And sometimes what we'll do is reach out to the mentor to get a little bit more context. And then something our mentors also do, which is helpful, it's like, hey, we're just letting you know this, no need to reach out. So we have mentors that are really great communicators via their notes, but I think it is something to really highlight and underline as we recruit folks and just as our by semester check-in emails. A great question.
Yeah. And I also want to add the default training that every mentor goes through within the platform talks about privacy and gives them guidance on explaining to their mentee up front that part of what they're asked to do by the institution is not to share the details of something that is meant to be confidential, but that they're there to help connect them with institutions. So they have a course that kind of both for mentees and mentors that explains that relationship, and that shouldn't be a surprise to the mentee if the mentor has followed that guidance. And I think to the end, whether they've remember it from the training or it's just how the institution is introduced to them, they're usually introducing themselves as someone who can connect you with the right resources. And great, I just chatted with you about financial aid. I'm going to go reach out. I'm going to get you connected with them. And that's a transparent element of the conversation with the mentee, as opposed to something that's like a secret recording of the conversation as well. Great point. All right, Jen, do we have any other? Yes, here we go. Are any of your programs paying mentors for participation? Is anyone doing a paid versus volunteer program? I think you're all volunteer based, right? Right now? Yes. Yeah. So all these programs are volunteer based. I will note that paying a student or leveraging student employees for a mentorship program, either to be mentors or to help coordinate, is a trend we've seen on the rise overall across Mentor Collective programs, not necessarily unique to graduate versus undergraduate versus other spaces, but either the mentor role or the kind of like we have a graduate assistant who helps coordinate or promote or coach our mentors. And there are also a number of institutions who will do kind of a mentor coaching blend type position sometimes, either in certain areas as well. I think that's all of our audience questions. So I'm going to wrap us up here for a moment. First by thanking again all of our panelists again, and then just reminding those of you who are on the line who haven't worked with Mentor Collective before, a little bit of how we work with partners. Each of these institutions obviously drives the why and the how of their mentors and engages their mentee and mentor communities. But they're able to leverage technology and services to make that more possible for them. Many of you on the room tried to do this on your own before partnering with us, and our goal is always to lift up and amplify to allow our partner contacts to spend more time student-facing capacities, more time in collaboration, less time in Excel sheets and paperwork and day-to-day administrative details. So whether that's making the matching process simpler, the recruitment process more effective, giving you the insights into the pairings that you have and what's happening with those engagements, and then equipping mentees and mentors with the training and the tools that they need to stay connected with each other. That's the power of the Mentor Collective platform and service. And also to work with our team to hear back about how others in the partner community and the Mentor Collective community are approaching their work so you can learn from and be guided by the success of others. So if you, I'm actually going to let Jen wrap up with some next steps and kind of outgoing polls. I'm just going to mention for anyone who wants to dive into the research I shared today, the slides and the last slide here have all the sources for that information if you would like to dig in and read any more. But I'll let you wrap us up, Jen.
Great, thank you. So we're going to wrap up with just a quick poll to better understand your experience today. You should see a pop-up on your screen that asks about continuing the conversation with us. If you're interested in how mentorship can support graduate student success at your institution, click yes. We'd love to get in touch with you. The poll also asks for your feedback on today's session. We are always eager to hear your comments and suggestions, including what other topics you'd like to see covered at future MC Mentor Collective educational events. So I'll give you a second to fill that out. And while you're filling that out, just another reminder, towards the end of the week or possibly early next week, I'll send out an email to folks who attended today, or if you registered for the event, you'll also receive this messaging with the recording from today's event and some additional follow-up resources. So anything we can do to support ongoing efforts to build your graduate mentorship programs, we'd love to help. So look out for that in your inboxes. All right. So while folks are still finishing up the poll, I thank you so much to our wonderful panelists today for presenting, and for everyone who attended for your time today. Thank you so much. And we will hopefully see you at another Mentor Collective educational event in the future. Have a really good week, and thank you.